Welcome to the Women's Network, which is a safe place for women to help each other be more and to discover who we really are and to share our stories authentically, which is what Lois and I are going to be doing here today. And I'm going to start by introducing Lois, who is the creator and founder of the Women's Network and was called onto this journey about 3 years ago to create this amazing organization.
And I'm going to introduce Kenya, who answered my cosmic call that I put out to the universe when I knew that this was a very large project that I was taking on. I knew that I couldn't do it alone and that it was always meant to be a collaboration and a co-creation with a lot of different women, and that it was going to be organic, and I needed someone to help me get it going. And thankfully, Kenya literally showed up and heard the call, and we've been having a lot of fun on this journey of co-creation that we've started.
Yes. And there are many different pieces that make up the Women's Network, and I wanted to start by talking about this really important piece, which is belonging, that we want every woman to feel that they belong. So what does that really mean to you?
It's a really good place to start, and always a little uncomfortable because I think I've really suffered from that pretty much all of my life. I grew up in a family with 4 sisters. We were 5 girls, no boys, and I was the middle child. And it was always this feeling that I didn't belong to either of the groups. I was kind of alone. It's interesting that even in a family where I had all of these sisters, and there was a tribe, and I certainly know the meaning of sisterhood, I felt so alone. How we can be with so many people and feel alone. And I know that you had a slightly different upbringing, so.
Yeah, I'll definitely speak to that. And I think that so many of us feel alone, and often amidst all these people is feeling alone in a crowded room. And I think for me, I did have a very different experience. I was an only child, and there was sort of this huge transformation that I went through as a child when I moved from America to England, and I had to really adapt to this whole new culture, and I really had to go out and just, find a way to belong, as you were saying. What did I have to do to belong? And so I really had to adapt, and I sort of went through this process my whole life of feeling like I needed to adapt to other people's needs so that I could feel safe and not feel alone. But often I felt that I was losing myself in other people so much, I actually felt more alone, which I think is kind of what you were saying.
It's so funny how it's all somehow cyclical, that we want to belong so we can feel safe. I mean, I heard you bring up that question of safety, and I think they're both extremely linked to one another. But when we have to give up so much of ourselves in order to have that, then we're not safe anymore because we don't know who we are and we're totally lost. And so that was really what I kept experiencing. Was really about somehow meeting other people's needs before we actually know what our own needs are.
And I think what you're saying too about meeting other people's needs and not knowing our own is very conducive of, us as women. And I think that it's a huge thing that's sort of passed on to us and projected onto us from lots of different places. And I definitely felt like that too. And I think I really sort of woke up to that fact that I was going around trying to please everyone when I, had put so much energy and effort and love into this really dear friend of mine, and he died. And it was such a huge wake-up call for me because it was a reflection, and I just realized, wow, I've lost all these pieces of myself, and really I need to come home to myself and be able to sit with myself, my darkness, my sadness, and then figure out, okay, well, where's my light? And so through that process, it was hugely transformational and healing. And I think that was really what drew me to the Women's Network, is that healing process. Because I think that a lot of what we're doing is healing all these really deep wounds that we carry.
Right. And for me, it was not dissimilar in the sense that I had always lost myself in other people. And then I became a mother. And it was really easy to lose myself in my kids. And I think it was partially that I felt like that was what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to give all of myself to these wonderful, beautiful beings that I brought into the world. But there was all this societal pressure of being the perfect mom and being the perfect wife and being the perfect this and that. And I really had no idea who I was anymore. And so I had always worked, and then suddenly I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was more lost than ever. I definitely had an identity crisis, and actually went into a really deep depression of wondering who I was, why I was here, and what in the world did I have to offer. I certainly had a lot of feelings that I wished that my mother had taught me about what it was to be a woman. I really felt like I didn't have any idea what it was.
I think too that actually that's a really interesting point, and I think it's something that we pass down from generation to generation.
Right. All of the beauties that we hold as women in terms of our intuition and our emotions and all of these things that we were told actually not to pay attention to, not to listen to our bodies, not to pay attention to our intuition and our gut sense, and not to share our emotions, not to cry, not to seem weak. All of the things that I now know are actually part of my strength. And so I found myself in all these groups with other women, and I realized, first of all, that I was not alone. I really thought that everybody else had it all together, that certainly on the surface it looked that everyone else was the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't do it. And when I got in these circles with women, I realized that we had more in common than what separated us. That we were all suffering at some level, and that we were all trying to find our way, and that we all had this feeling of being alone together, that everyone else was fine, and that there must be something wrong with me. And I realized that actually when we came together in that kind of authentic sharing and really let our hair down and said what was really on our minds, that there was a huge healing that happened. Just knowing that I wasn't broken. And that actually was the birthplace of the Women's Network, where I started thinking, for me, that was such an amazing experience. And I really wanted other women to be able to benefit from that kind of finding yourself. I really felt like I had abandoned myself as a woman. I didn't know who I was anymore. And these other women were such a beautiful reflection for me. Having us all come together and recognize that no matter what our age and what our experiences, our voices matter, our experience, our wisdom matters, and that we all need to come together to remind ourselves as a collective of who we are as women and what our gifts are, because I think we've strayed. I think we've forgotten and abandoned a lot of pieces of who we are as women, and it's going to take all of us coming back together to remember as a collective. So
I think that's really important, and I think that's a great place for us to wrap up. So I'm just going to take a minute to invite all of you to come and explore the Women's Network, to be a part of this movement and bring your piece and share your story.
So important for all of us to have a voice. Every single one of us matters, and we look forward to having you join us on this incredible journey that we've begun together.